Hi, welcome everyone. I know there's people joining us from across the globe, so thanks for joining us on this webinar. What we're going to do is we'll wait a few minutes just to see if there's a few more people who want to join us. And then what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a short and focused chat from both Mike and Luke about both companies. And they're going to tell us some more about Xamarin and Judo. Right, so hopefully everyone that wants to join us is now here. So what we'll do is we'll kick off with a short presentation. My name's Daniel Lee. I'm the marketing manager here at Judo Payments. By all means, if you have any requirements from us, just drop me an email. You'll see my email on the end of the slides that will be shown up here. So let's get started. We're going to hand over to Mike for a quick presentation about Xamarin. So, Mike, over to you.
Wonderful. Let's go full screen with this bad boy. So, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. This is a global webinar after all. I'm Mike James, developer evangelist at Xamarin, and I'm really excited to be here talking to you about Judopay and Xamarin today. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a .NET developer. I've written a couple of apps that are available on GitHub for you to download and play with if you want to. Pretty much everything I write nowadays is open source. So you can just go to my GitHub, which is mikecodes.net, and you'll find all of these projects. These are the main ones that are worth looking at. This is beer drinking, the first one, which is a beer tracking app, not too dissimilar to an app called Untapped, which is built using hybrid technology such as Cordova. It's got an Azure backend, uses app service. We use things like Azure Search, and allows you to track what beers you want, that you've consumed and that you may want to consume in the future with recommendations. I've also got another app called Step Counter, which is very simple. It merely counts your steps for iOS and Android. And finally, for mobile, we've got Dutch spelling. I moved to Belgium for a little while. It's about 7 months. And I wanted to learn Dutch before I made the move. I also wanted to drink as much beer as humanly possible, hence beer drinking. But so I built myself an app using Xamarin to allow me to improve my spelling of Dutch. It turns out it was a bit of a waste of time because I ended up moving to Brussels, and as I'm sure you already know, the primary language in Brussels is actually French, so I learned a language which was redundant to where I'd moved to. But nonetheless, it was a good sample application. It's on GitHub. This app actually isn't even in the App Store, so if you wanted to build an app into the iOS App Store without any real work, you can go ahead, download that, build it, and deploy it, and you would have a unique little app. And lastly, we've got Hydrate, which is a Mac application that I built using C# again, but it was to test that we could get into the App Store through the review process. So these are all built using Xamarin, and it's all built using C# because C# is my favorite language. We've got a couple of products at Xamarin. We've got the platform tools, which is what we're going to be focusing on today, which is Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, and even Xamarin Mac. Our other products include Xamarin Test Cloud, which is our testing solution, which is a warehouse in Denmark with over 2,000 physical devices ready for you to upload your completed apps in order to test how they look and how they perform. And this isn't unique to apps built with Xamarin technology. If you built your app using Cordova or Java or Objective-C, it doesn't matter as long as it's running on a mobile device. We can test it within Xamarin Test Cloud. We also have Xamarin Insights, which is our crash and analytics reporting tool. With one line of code, we can catch any uncaught exceptions and report them straight away to you. So this means that you've built your application, you've unit tested, and you put it on the App Store, and you're pretty confident that it works well. And you start getting one or two reviews saying that it's crashed or it doesn't work. Xamarin Insights allows you to find out exactly what the crash was and what line of code it happened to occur on, so that you can be very proactive about fixing bugs And as I say, it's one line of code to get started. It's a NuGet package to find it, and a crash reporting is free to all Xamarin subscribers. And all of these technologies are underpinned by our training solution, which is Xamarin University. This is instructor-led classes which are online, and they range from between an hour to 3 hours, and you learn literally everything you need to know to become a mobile developer expert. So you'll learn about Android activities and UI table cell reuse on iOS, as well as async await and how to build performant applications. So very much worth investigating Xamarin University if you're looking at the Xamarin platform. But today we're going to be focused on the platform, as this is technology for building mobile apps, so we won't be looking at Test Cloud or Insights. So what is native? There's 3 things that I require in order to define something as native. The first thing is it's got to have a native user interface. I don't want someone's interpretation of what a button should look like on iOS or what a table view should look like on Android. I would much rather just have the native control that Google or Apple provide to us. I'm going to want API access. I want 100% access to every single API that's available to the native language developers. So the Objective-C and Java developers have access to all of the great APIs. Well, I want to be able to consume those same APIs from within C# or S#. And last but not least, performance. It's got to be very performant. Mobile applications aren't like desktop apps. You've got to have a performant app because we're loading up our mobile apps to kill time. You know, you're stood in queue at Starbucks and you're waiting for someone to make you a cup of coffee, and you pull up an app. What you don't want is a situation where the app takes longer to load than the coffee took to make. So you have to have performant applications. So if you have these 3 things as part of your application, then I would define your app as a native app. If you don't have a native UI or you don't have access to all the APIs and it's not performant, then I wouldn't qualify your app as a native application. So let's have a quick look at how we might architect our mobile apps. This is a traditional approach within Xamarin. This is the idea that we're going to share around 70 to 75% of our application across all 3 platforms, so that's iOS, Android, and Windows. The shared C# core is normally all the boring bits of the application that the user doesn't really care about. It's the models, the business logic, the data persistence, the bits that aren't going to get you a 5-star review on the App Store. So we take this shared C# core and we're going to build a user interface 3 different times. So we would do it once for iOS using C# and storyboards. We would do it again for Android using Android XML and C#. And then last but not least, Windows using XAML and C#. So we get 100% API access. It's very high performant, but we're able to share about 75% of the code. Well, this was a great approach for a long time, and then we created something called Xamarin Forms. And Xamarin Forms allows us to share even code. So at this point, we're able to share 99.9% of our code across all 3 platforms. And the way this works is that we actually create an abstraction layer above the native platform. All 3 mobile operating systems have buttons, have table views, they have tab views, they have sliders. But the APIs that we use as developers to interact with these controls is very, very different. So what Xamarin Forms does is it gives you a common API in order to create and define your user interface, which is how you can share more code and still create a 100% native application. And naturally, because it's C#, we can run it almost anywhere. So we can run it from mobile devices, from microcontrollers, all the way up to the cloud. And everything you see today where we're talking about C# is applicable to S# developers as well. We actually love S# at Xamarin. I'm not an S# developer myself, but I know that we've got a lot of people within the company and certainly within the community that absolutely love the language. So just remember, everything you see today in C# is applicable to US# developers as well. So if you've been a Windows developer for a while, these namespaces will look very familiar to you. You'll have been using System for years. System.link is one of my favorite features of .NET. Link is just amazing. I couldn't imagine programming without it. So you're used to all of these namespaces for years, and just like when Microsoft give us a new platform such as HoloLens or the Microsoft Band, we're going to get some new APIs. And we never worry about these new APIs because we know it's just an extension of what we've been doing for years with .NET. Well, we've done exactly the same thing for iOS. So we've got this core set of namespaces that follow us around across all of the platforms. You can think of these as anything that isn't touching a user interface level. So it's not going to have like WinForms or any WPF APIs within there, but it's going to be your standard base class library stuff. Well, we've got that, and then on top of that, we've got a one-to-one mapping to every single API that's available on iOS. So anything an Objective-C or Swift developer can do on iOS, we can do using either C# or F#. And we've done exactly the same for Java as well. So we've got that core C# functionality, and then on top of that, we've got the one-to-one mapping to all of the APIs that the Java developers have access to. And this isn't magic, this is just an extension of what we've been doing on .NET for years. If you've ever p-invoked to a native library, it's effectively the same thing. I mean, it's slightly more complicated than that in terms of what we're actually doing, but if you think of it as a platform invocation, then you should have a pretty solid idea of the fundamental of how the technology works. So there is no magic involved here. We have had a mechanism from Microsoft in order to call native libraries from C# and managed languages for a little while now. I want to talk quickly about performance. There are two sides to the performance story. There is iOS, which allows us or forces us to do ahead of time compilation. This is a rule from Apple, so it's something we have to do. So this means in Visual Studio, when we hit build, we're going to go down to IL, just like a WinForms or WPF app. We're going to ship the IL off to a Mac. Now we ship it off to a Mac because we need a Mac somewhere on the network to use its Xcode toolchain, which is so we use the same toolchain that Objective-C or Swift apps use. So by the time we get our ARM binary at the end, it's had all the same performance optimizations as an app built using Swift or Objective-C. So there's no loss of speed or performance through using Xamarin iOS. On Xamarin Android, the story is slightly different. We can JIT on the device, so we tend to do that. What we tend to see, and it really does depend on the situation, but what we tend to see is that a Xamarin Android app will perform better than the equivalent Java app. And to show this to you, I've got some performance charts that were created by the community. This is peer-reviewed, so if you want to go and have a look at how they came up with these numbers, you're more than welcome. And in fact, if you're a C++ expert or a Java expert or an Objective-C expert, you can go ahead and put in a pull request for the code that they use to create these benchmarks. So if you think you can make these benchmarks more performant, then feel free to put a pull request in, and the chart will get updated. So as I say, I think this is version 2 or 3 of the benchmarks, and you can see that Xamarin actually performs better than the equivalent Objective-C app. Now naturally we're slower than C++, but it's really key to understand that there is no performance loss through using Xamarin iOS. In fact, in some cases there is a performance gain to be had. And the same is true for Android as well. We see that as long as you're not using something like Titanium, we're going to be very, very performant, to the point where we're faster than the equivalent Java, but naturally we're not quite as fast as C++. But with all the productivity boosts that you get through using a managed language like C# and using the loveliness of .NET, there's a huge gain to be had through using Xamarin Android rather than just C++. So anything an Objective-C, Swift or Java developer can do in their respective languages and IDEs, we can do in C# using Visual Studio. So it really is anything. If anybody ever tells you that you can't do something in Xamarin, please correct them because they are wrong, or even just direct them to me, and I'm happy to email them and let them know. And C# really is a cross-platform language. It runs on 2.6 billion devices. So to me, it's almost as portable as C++ because I can run it on all of the platforms that I can easily monetize. So the beer tracking app that I mentioned right at the beginning, called Beer Drinking, is on GitHub, and it's the basis of today's demo project. Luke from Judopay has been helping me. He's got a branch of the project which is all on GitHub, so you can go and look at this now if you wanted to. As I say, my GitHub is mikecodes.net. You'll find all the code up there now. But this is an app that's built entirely with C#. It's got an Azure backend, an app service, and we wanted to have a look at how we would implement Judopay into such an app. So the idea would be that we can make suggestions to you using machine learning about what beers you might like, and then put you in contact with a beer distributor in order to take payment for the beer within the mobile app and then forward the order on to have the beer delivered to you. So as I say, it's all on GitHub, so do go ahead and download that and have a play either now during the webinar or even afterwards. I'm always happy to take pull requests, so if you want to have a side project as well, you're more than welcome to help out on the project. So with that, that's a very, very quick introduction to the Xamarin platform, and I'll pass over to Luke.
Hey, hello. So my name is Luke. I'm head of SDK at Judo, and I'm dev lead for Xamarin SDK. And I'm going to keep this short and sweet, and we'll just jump into the coding demo. But first, we'll do a little bit about what Judo is. So Judo is a mobile payments company, and what that means is we offer ways for payment services within your app. So we were founded in 2012 by some kind of fintech veterans. We've been through 2 rounds of venture capitalist funding, and I joined last August. Before I worked for a mobile construction company, and we did kind of big apps for organizing the workflow of big projects like skyscrapers and stadiums. And at that company, that's where I actually learned, cut my teeth as it is on Xamarin. So we wrote a couple of different apps, one for Android, one for iOS, and actually got quite a knack for it. And when I decided I wanted a fresh challenge, I actually came to a company also doing Xamarin. So yeah, we have offices in London, New York, Hong Kong. Our London office is actually in Angel, Islington. And I think one of the best things about programming as a job is collaboration. So if you're nearby, you're looking to put payments in your app, or even working on something else, get in contact with us. We're always interested in hearing things. So yeah, what do we do essentially? We do secure in-app payments to seamlessly integrate your application, be it native mobile or web. And it's something we like to call AppCommerce, sell more, risk less. So what does that actually mean? Apart from kind of striving to make it the kind of no-fuss option to add into your application or your website, it's us focusing on building our platform and our system to support merchants with complex needs. And as you can see on the slide, there's a few of our newest partners. So further than that, so one of the things we do offer is put a lot of work into is fraud prevention, and that's kind of where we kind of really try and strive to push above our rivals or other people within that space. We have a team entirely devoted to fraud countermeasures, and generally we bring them on board, and our customers tend to find after the first 30 days a 90% drop in fraud. After that, it kind of hovers around 1.5% to 0.05%, which is well below the industry average. So some of the spaces we're kind of competing in and doing pretty well right now is taxis, restaurants, pay at tables, ticketing is a new space we're moving into. See a lot of growth there, and brand loyalty cards. Unless any kind of space, if it's an app, if it's taking payments, we're kind of working on that too. So as I say, I'll keep it quick. I'm just going to talk a little bit about our SDK, and that's kind of my day-to-day focus, well, amongst other things at Judo. So we're currently on version 2.3. We're hoping to actually push out 2.3.1 next week. But as I say, these aren't all the features that are just new to 2.3. These are sort of the highlights. So what we offer is a full suite of Judo services, and what that means is payments, token payments, card registration, again, transaction backs and monitoring stuff. Basically everything you need to successfully buy things through an application. We support Apple Pay. We support Apple Pay in UK, and we're a launch partner in Australia. New specific to version 2.3 is we have access to the Judo API 5.0, which is really important for some industry changes that are coming in the next year or so for basically government standards to allow you to continue taking payments in the space. And as I mentioned before, latest fraud countermeasures, a lot of them we are public about, a lot of them we're kind of secret about, because as soon as you tell the fraudsters how you're beating them, they find new ways to beat you. So what I would like to stress with this SDK, and especially on the Xamarin platform, we are an actively developed SDK, and we're trying to do 2-week release cycles on features, and we listen to you. So we have a public GitHub. It's open source. If you have feature requests or any questions, you can go to the GitHub. The GitHub is github.com/judopay/judo-xamarin. And I'm pretty much on that site every day, every hour during the working week. And if you want to get in contact, that's a way to get directly to me. So at this point, I'd like to jump into the coding example. So as we were talking to Mike before, I got hold of his beer drinking app, which I had a lot of fun with, just kind of hopping about and typing beers into and see if I could find them. And it brings back a lot of information, taste profile, percentage, and it's just, I haven't found a beer I've been able to name that hasn't come up on it. I think it's backed by BreweryDB. Yeah, BreweryDB, which is it's powered by, well, he's hosting it on Azure. I'm making requests to that and coming back. It's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm kind of going to show you in this kind of demo how easy it is to hook Judopay into your application. And if I can do that within the kind of 20-minute window, it kind of shows you how easy and non-fuss it is. So the first thing we always do when we come into these situations, I haven't quite mastered the art of coding and talking at the same time, so I'm just going to be uncommenting as we go. But just to show you, it's pretty easy. First thing you will need to do is have a Judo account. You can get that from our main website, judopay.com, and there should be a kind of getting started button, and from that we'll give you a Judo account in sandbox mode, which allows you to make transactions, make test transactions in kind of with play money, and we can upgrade you to a live account when the time comes for you to actually start transacting. But a sandbox account is really, really useful for testing, basically. So once you have your account, you're going to want to get the Judopay Xamarin component. There's a couple of different ways to do that. You can get it from GitHub, download the package, build it yourself. We also have the build Xam file, so you can install the component through that, or you can use the Xamarin component store. With the component, I really like the component store because with it, it brings all the documentation, our sample apps, and just kind of the full package. It's the easiest way to put it in. So once you've got that, sorry, I'm just going to take a glass of water here because coding is thirsty work. You want to start configuring your app. So I personally like to do that within the app delegate of, this is iOS, obviously, and I like to do it within the app delegate. So you want to choose your environment. I'm going to do live because I'm a pro, I'm a vet, and after that, you're going to want to add, when you sign up for a Judo account, we will provide you with a token, a secret, which you keep to yourself, and a Judo ID, which kind of represents you as a merchant. I've hooked it up elsewhere in the app because if I do it here, I've essentially doxed my details out to the general public, but I've actually done it in a method just below this, but rest assured it's there. And then after that, there's various configuration options. We try and keep it light. You may want to accept Maestro, Amex, AVS's kind of geolocation, asking the consumer for their postcode, and 3D Secure is an extra layer of fraud protection that we enable. So that's pretty much it from that side of it. It's pretty easy. At that stage, you have your app configured, and the next thing you really want to do is make a call. So at this point, I'll just quickly jump over to the app itself. I'm just going to cast my iPad over here. 1 second. Can you see that? You can see that. Okay. So this is the beer drinking app we've been talking about, and it's pretty cool. You can basically search through BreweryDB for a list of beers. What do you fancy, Mike? You want a Stella? Okay. I don't know. Okay, fair enough. I'm not a Stella man myself, but maybe a Stella. So we got percentage, beer information, and price. It's quite expensive for a Stella, but we are based in London, so I'm not too shocked myself. And this is I've very quickly in the kind of day I took to put payments into. I hacked up a small payments user interface. It's nothing special. You can just kind of up how many beers you want. Oh, sorry, I'm clicking on this and I realize it's over here. It's just cast my iPad. So you can click on it, you can update the number of beers. So in this demo, we really want to quickly cover payments, token payments, and Apple Pay. And if we get that in the time period, we'll be doing pretty well. So showing that, so as I say, I've hooked up a rudimentary kind of UI for this, and so it's basically hooked up to the button you saw there, Pay Now or Buy Beer Now, and within it I've made a service because old habits die hard, and you could just make the SDK calls right here, but I've abstracted it a little bit away. So within here, here's where we actually get to the meat of bones and things. So what you actually need to start making a payment with Judopay is, first of all, you need your payment view model. So payment view model consists of the amount you want to pay, the currency you are using, consumer reference, so that's more for your use, so you can keep track of the payments and the order as such and reconcile it with yourself, and then empty card view model, which we will populate with our out-of-the-box UI solution. So we have two solutions. You can either use our UI, which is fully PCI compliant, so in that way, no card details kind of get to us, or more importantly, get to you, and it's all above board. And that's basically what the PCI stamp of approval is. Or you can choose to use your own UI, and at that point you wire up the card view model yourself. So there's that, and then we have two delegates, a success delegate and a failure delegate. So this is basically what the app does when, as you'll see in a minute, we pass control over to the Judo Payments SDK, and it's asynchronous because it involves web calls and user interaction. So at that point, we wire up two delegates. One is the success payment delegate. It's kind of what we want to see, and in that is returned a payment receipt with all the information you kind of need to clear the payments with yourself. It'll have the receipt ID, tokens, etc., etc. You can also see I've got a little service there. So once we get back the receipt, I'd like to store the token, and from that we can make repeat payments with one click, or with just the security code if you're so inclined. So that's more of the Uber style kind of payment model. And then I've just put in a little pop-up message to say you got the receipt and it's all good. And down here we have the failure block. Within it we have the Judo error, which is quite a verbose error model. So if anything goes wrong, even coward validation, say you put in the wrong CV2 or your card is declined or out of date, it'll come back through that, and you can choose to do whatever you want with that error API. Or we also provide a receipt back as well in case it is to the card being declined if we want to keep records of it. So these are the two things you need. It's pretty simple. You just at that point wire up those two delegates I declared above, and then down here you're seeing a little bit ahead, but it's all right. That's for the token payments later. So then at that point you call our Judo instance, which is sort of the main class of the SDK. You pass in the view model, you pass through the callbacks, and you're away, and that's it. So we'll switch back over to our view of the app. So like I said, we're having two Stella because that's what we want, and we'll just make the payment. So all I have to do is hit Pay Now, and then at that point the SDK takes over. We have two kind of formats kind of view sizes. This is because we're on an iPad mini here. This is our tablet UX, because I really don't like kind of blown out UIs where it's kind of all stretched and not making right use of the space. And also payments are also should be kind of discrete. So yeah. So this is it's make a payment. So we'll make it. We have test card details. You can find these kind of anywhere on the internet. They're pretty useful for testing, and they're kind of card numbers that the banks like to just have and clear and let everything through for basically essentially for development. So yeah, let's buy a beer. So after that, depending on the settings you have on your back account, it may ask for a postcode, it may ask for extra fraud information. I've set up this account to actually ask for the postcode, but you don't actually need it, so we can just go on and pay. And yep, it's that easy. It's come back to us. If I put down a breakpoint, I could show you the model. I hadn't there, so it should have been on top of that. But it's come back with a receipt ID and a token, as we will see in a minute. So it's as easy as that. As long as your view model is complete, it will come back to you and it's all set up. So that's really, really easy, and that's kind of like the kind of bones of what we do here at Judo. It's to make payments, and that's a payment kind of wired up in under a couple of minutes. So as I was saying before, another thing we kind of want to show you is kind of a more modern take on what payments can do. So once a payment is returned, no one wants to keep on having to put their card details in again and again and again. So as you saw above in the success block, I've written a little kind of hacked service just for the sake of this. In your actual app, you'll want to store the payment tokens in a encrypted format somewhere on the device. But for now, I've just got it on an instance of the client because this is just a demo. So anyway, I've got a little code block that checks for the token, and then if the token is present, wire up a token payment instead of the full body payment. And again, it's the same sort of model. The amount, the currency, the consumer reference, but instead of that, we wire up the token. And the token isn't actually the card details itself. It's a kind of salted hashed version of the card details. The card rests on our server, and these are passed back for further use. So there's no like security risk here. It's just enough that we match up with our server. And from that, we have a consumer token representing you. The last four card digits, which is useful for kind of identifying which card we're talking about, but doesn't give away the game, and the card type. So now, if we hop back to the simulator, let's have another beer. It's my turn to pick. I quite like. We have a pub along the end of the road called the Xmith Arms. Oh, not the Xmith Arms. The Lexington. Xmith Arms is another favorite. Got too many favorite pubs, and I always quite like this one called Big Wave, and it's a nice amber ale. It's made by Kuna Breweries, and it's really tasty, but it gives you a terrible hangover. So once again, we'll have two eye-wateringly expensive beers, and I'll make a payment. So this is a token payment. This is our token payment UI. And for the account, you can set it up that it doesn't ask for the security code, and it would just be like, oh, you sure you want to make this payment? And you will go through and make the payment, and that'll be it, no fuss. That's the kind of one-tap payment options we're starting to get used to in modern life. But because I'm just a bit security conscious about my test cards, I'm asking for it. So it's as simple as that. Just put it in, make the payment, and once again, payment's gone through successful. So we're going to move on pretty quick because we have little time for this demo because we're kind of wedging in as much in as we possibly can. One of the cooler things I think we offer at Judo, and one of the things I definitely enjoyed programming, was Apple Pay for Judo. So I've got another call on my service here that basically makes an Apple payment, and again, it's even simpler. So I've got a little helper class on the SDK within a client service that can check if Apple Payment is available on the device. So what that is does a user have Apple Pay cards registered on it, and are these cards of the type we accept, or you accept as a merchant, you decide. And again, we wire up the same success failure delegates, and it has the same output as before. And then we got to put together our Apple Pay view model, which is a little bit more complicated than the standard Judo view model, but that's just it by its nature. It's what Apple wanted. So the way I like to think of Apple Pay view models is they're kind of like a little receipt. So you basically just put in itemized strings of what the user is buying, the amount of them, and a value of them, and that kind of each item forms a PK payment item. So I've just got like a little helper class here to kind of spool out the beers we have in our basket into the correct format for Apple Pay. If you go look at this branch, you can look down at the methods yourself. So after that, you've kind of itemized each individual ones. You kind of set up some more boilerplate for Apple Pay. Again, it's your country code where you're taking the payment, your currency, the networks you support, Visa, MasterCard, etc. I think they've just added Diners Club the other month. That's a new one. And again, your last item should be your summary item, and that's essentially the grand total of what you bought before, and basically who you're paying out to. So in this case, it's beer drinking limited, possibly what you call it. And again, a consumer reference, and then a merchant ID. So I set up my little merchant ID with Judo. Because that's something you have to, it's a certificate you have to reconcile with Judo to allow payments. So you can go to our kind of portal website, download a signing certificate, and then at that point you take that to Apple, and then you sign that with a merchant ID you create between them and the devices, and then the merchant ID, and you should get something that looks like this. You pick it. And then from there, you can send that back to Judo, and we have that on our servers that we use to reconcile Apple payments. And apart from saying some entitlements within your app, which we have documentation on the site, it's kind of tedious. I won't show you. It's all XML. That's about it. So at that point, we can make an Apple payment. So going back to the app, what do you fancy this time, Mike? Duvel. I do like Duvel. I'm on board with this one. Not so much Stella, but I'll take a Duvel. So here's Duvel. Again, we'll want two. Do you want one, Dan?
Yeah, go on. I'll have one. Thanks.
We'll have one for Dan. I'm feeling spendy. It's payday today. So at that point, again, it's just as easy as another. We've wired everything up, and this is the Apple payment sheet. We don't really have much control over how it looks. It's just a standard one that feeds into Apple, and at this point they control. So as you can see, we have 3 Duvels and then a little subtotal down here, and it's as easy as just scanning your fingerprint. Hopefully, I go through my card's not blocked, and yep, we have 3 Duvels. So obviously at this stage, you'll get your Judo payment receipts, and you send that over to your server, and you would reconcile that in this app, Mike, to basically deliver beers to the client from the distributor, and that's kind of the beauty of it. So yeah, that's really about it. That's the kind of main thing you can do. Obviously, you don't have to take just straight up payments. You can do card registration. You can do a lot of different stuff, and it's really easy. So if you see we're making a token payment there, we have just a couple of different options. We have pre-auths, which allow you to kind of reserve money within an account. Obviously, the payments, Apple Pay pre-auths and Apple Pay payments. And that's just a few of the kind of services we offer. So yeah, that's about it for me. It's pretty easy. I've quite enjoyed that. I thought I'd be a bit nervous, but yeah, it's good. So at this point, we'll just give you back to Dan, and we'll do a Q&A.
Right. Okay. So we've had a few questions coming in during Luke and Mike's pieces. So we'll start with. Oh, there's one here. Here it is. Okay. So one was, this appears to be an iOS code. Is it possible to use the Judo API SDK in portable Xamarin.Forms? I suppose that one should be aimed at Mike, really.
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting question. So it's kind of down to how the underlying library has been developed. So, Luke, does the API differ from the Xamarin iOS implementation to the Xamarin Android implementation?
Well, when I first took over the SDK, they did actually quite a bit because it was originally a third-party project by some contractors, but they wanted to bring it in-house, and that's pretty much why I was hired. So they were kind of developed in kind of isolation from each other. So once I kind of tightened up the iOS half of the SDK and kind of got it to a standard that I was happy with and enjoyed, at that point, I was committed to kind of throwing out the other half and kind of making it as much code sharing behind as we can. So what we have with the SDK today is a near identical interface for all the calls between Xamarin Android and Xamarin iOS. It's pretty much the same deal. You do have to pass the context with Xamarin Android. It's one of the kind of differences in the life cycles between the platforms that you just have to get used to. You could do, I did look into sourcing it myself later down the app so that the user didn't have to pass it in, but I felt to cover all the edge cases and just kind of all the weird and wonderful things that can happen in app development, it's best to do it, just let the user do it themselves.
Okay, so I guess to answer that question then, if the APIs are very similar, then it wouldn't be terribly difficult to call into the underlying implementation. So I guess if you're looking to use Judopay with Xamarin Forms, then what you want to do is create an interface which you would then implement within the Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android project that would then call into the Judopay library. Because although, as Luke says, the APIs for Judopay are very similar between iOS and Android, there are going to be certain APIs that aren't the same. So you'll need to make allowances for that, but it looks to me, and I'm currently just browsing through the Judopay SDK on GitHub because the source is all available. It looks to me as if this is actually really easy to consume within Xamarin Forms.
Thanks so much, guys. So we have another question that's come in as well. It's, can the library be implemented purely in shared projects, PCLs, or does it require separate implementations per platform? I mean, that one, who wants to pick that one up?
Well, yeah, I can take it. You can use it in shared projects. You can use it in Xamarin Forms with the kind of interface kind of functionality it has. You can also download the Judopay.net SDK, and you can use that in any shared libraries. And you basically from that make the same calls that the Xamarin library can make, but you kind of skip out of there of involvement. But if you want to use it within platform-specific ones, you can still use the Xamarin.net library.
So I guess if developers really wanted to, could they get all the way down to just calling REST APIs?
Yeah, we have a REST API. It's also documented on the website.
Yeah.
So essentially, what the .NET SDK at the end of the day is, it's itself a REST client that's wrapped up, but it's got some extra layers of abstraction and fraud buried within it. But you can hit the same REST API. I believe that's what our native iOS and native Swift and native Android ones do themselves.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so there's another one here that's I'm not seeing where to create an account on the judopay.com site. Okay, so firstly you need to go to the documentation tab at the top of the homepage, and once you actually go there should be a button that says Getting Started, and what that'll do is that'll guide you through and take you through simple sign up all the way through to setting up an app, and you can actually get started that way. If you get stuck in there's actually help that you can actually contact one of our team, and they can guide you through the process. Okay, so we've actually got one here that's what challenges do you see your customers experiencing, how does Xamarin help solve these problems? Well, that one's aimed at you, Mike.
Yeah, so I think the challenge is, it's not just unique to Xamarin developers, but the challenge of mobile is to create the best possible experience for the end user with the least amount of money spent and time taken. And I think that's why cross-platform is such a great approach to developing mobile applications. But you can't just create a cross-platform app. You've still got to create a great cross-platform app, so it still needs to be native. So I think the biggest challenge that Xamarin customers face is probably getting the most amount of code that they can share across all of the platforms, and possibly talking to their clients about, that we can save you so much time. We can write the app once and we can run it across all 3 platforms. When we look at, Windows as just one particular platform that Xamarin Forms targets, Windows has now got Windows Store, UWP, and then there's just generic flavored Windows as well. So, there's multiple platforms from one code base. And often people will assume that because you've got this write once, run anywhere approach, that you're getting a subpar quality app. But actually you're still getting 100% native. And if we go all the way back to my earlier slides where I had the 3 criteria, native performance, you 100% get that with something like Xamarin Forms. You've got a native API as well, and although you're stuck at that high, although you've got that high level abstraction, you can drop down into the low level APIs and get access to 100% of all the APIs that the Objective-C and Swift guys have. So yeah, I think the biggest thing for Xamarin developers is convincing other people of the magic rather than actually any issues that they face with the technology.
Right. Are there any plans to integrate Android Pay into the component?
Yeah. So there's definitely plans to do it. We've got a roadmap kind of laid ahead of us for the next couple of months. A lot of changes coming to the SDK, a lot of improvements, and a lot of features. So generally, we also have an Android SDK here at Judo, and we have a team for that. And they're really great guys, so they are kind of working on that at the moment. And as I kind of cheat a little bit, so I let them do the work, and then I kind of look at their implementations and knock it out in Xamarin very, very quickly. It allowed me to do 3DS in Android, which is actually quite difficult to do due to some of the class restrictions within Android. So I think we're actually one of the first companies to offer it natively in a native app. And that was our Android developer, Jim. That was one of the things he's done, and I was very easily able to port it because he trailblazed it. So we'll once again be doing that, and I've seen kind of what they have in beta there, and it's looking good. So I wouldn't say it's too far away, and we definitely have a plan.
Thanks, Luke. So, Mike, this one is for you. Are Xamarin apps really native?
Yes. I could extend on that, but the answer is just yes. They're 100% native. I spoke to someone yesterday at the user group in London, and he was trying to explain to me how Xamarin worked, which is quite amusing in itself. But he was saying that it converts from C# down to Objective-C, and it converts from C# to Java, and it's wholly incorrect. So actually what we do is we generate the native ARM binary. So it's 100% native, and by the time that you have the binary in the App Store, you can't tell the difference if it was built with Objective-C or Swift or Xamarin. You get 100% native performance, it's 100% native user interface, and because you've got access to all of those APIs, there's not one feature that the guys in Java and Objective-C can do that I can't do in C#. So yeah, it's 100% native.
I hope that's settled that one then.
Yeah.
So there's one here that does Judo assist with the credit card settlement process? I think this is one that our sort of operations team will always be there on hand. If you have a more in-depth question about that, what I can actually do is get one of our team to actually contact you. So if you'd like to contact me after the actual webinar, I'll actually get a more in-depth answer for that one. There's one here. Does Judo offer any fraud prevention solutions? I know Luke's touched on this, and we've seen some fantastic stats coming off of the back end. So I'll let Luke pick this one up.
Yeah. And again, to kind of match Mike for short answers, we totally do. We offer a lot of public options, a lot of options that you can request from our kind of in-house fraud team and operations team. But just to drop through them quickly like a scattergun pace. We have blacklisting, whitelisting, dynamic routing, so we can set different thresholds on cards and basically route the payment through different kind of checks and fraud prevention options past that. And that's really important. Dynamic is not a an option a lot of other companies kind of offer. And one of the most important things we do is we look at a card payment, but not in isolation. So it's your entire card payment kind of record with us and everything coming through. So we kind of look back and we're able to kind of get more of an insight about the fraud happening. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff it's a bit of secret sauce because, as I mentioned before, if the fraudsters can see it, then they can start working on countermeasuring our countermeasures. So even though it is an open source project, we kind of keep our fraud separate in an imported binary that we call Judo Shield, and it's very effective. So I'm sure you don't want to hear the stats again from earlier. But we also listen to our customers and kind of they know their business and their kind of space they're operating in better than anyone else. So we let merchants themselves specify rules. So they can block on country, they could do IP matching, say you only sell, you're a fruit vendor and you only sell fruit maybe in the greater London area, then you're not going to want to sell or you're not going to be able to field offers from say Dorset or somewhere, so you can block on that. And just like a host of others, we have just many options and very friendly operations staff to kind of guide you through that and to kind of tailor the experience to what you want.
Right. So I think we've come to the end of the webinar. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us. Feel free to contact us. I'm sure you can reach out to both Mike and Luke via GitHub and various other social mediums.
Yeah, totally.
But thank you ever so much. If you do have any further questions, feel free. Our emails are up here, so you can either drop us an email or contact one of the Judo team or Xamarin team directly. But thank you ever so much, and we'll actually be sending a copy of this webinar to you via email. We'll probably just put it up on YouTube so you can access it and maybe share it around if you need to. But again, once again, thanks ever so much for joining us. I hope this has been really helpful. This has been Judo and Xamarin.